Okay, so we've gotten a ton of messages about the Madeline Kingsbury case, and you guys clearly want to go deeper than just the surface level news.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's do it. Let's dive deep into this mystery together and see what we can uncover.
Absolutely. And we've got a really great source to work with today, an article called The Disappearance of Maddie Kingsbury, a timeline of events and community efforts published on Investor.
Right. This article is going to give us a really good framework for understanding the timeline and who the key players are.
Yeah.
But like you guys requested, I'm hoping we can go beyond just the basic facts.
Yeah, definitely.
And really try to dig into the why behind it all. You know what I mean?
I do.
So to set the stage for everyone, we're in Winona, Minnesota. It's March 31st, 2023.
Cool.
Seems like a totally ordinary day, right?
Right.
But things take a dark turn when Maddie Kingsbury, a young mother of two, just vanishes.
And the details of her life before she disappeared just add another layer to this whole puzzle. The article describes her as a dedicated mother who was juggling a new job as a clinical research coordinator at the Mayo Clinic while also pursuing her master's degree.
Wow. So she was super driven and ambitious.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It makes you wonder if that played any kind of role in her disappearance. You know what I mean? Like, did her ambition or her drive lead her into a situation that became dangerous?
That's definitely something investigators would consider, for sure. Was there anyone who might have felt threatened by her success or by what she was trying to achieve?
Right.
Or maybe those ambitions put her in a risky situation somehow.
Right. Okay, so let's get into the timeline of that day, March 31st. The article lays it out pretty clearly. We know that Maddie and Adam Fravel, the father of her children, dropped their kids off at daycare around 8:00 a.m.
Okay.
Adam says that he saw Maddie go into her home office, and then he left shortly after that and never saw her again. Then just 15 minutes later at 8:15 a.m., Maddie's texting with her sister Megan.
And those texts are really interesting because they capture a totally normal, everyday moment, right before everything changes. It's such a stark contrast to the silence that follows.
Yeah, it's eerie.
Yeah.
Right after those messages, communication goes silent. Maddie doesn't respond to any more texts or calls.
Yeah.
Later that day, her friend Katie goes over to check on her and finds the house totally empty and quiet.
So spooky.
Right.
And that discovery obviously sets off a chain reaction. The Winona Police Department immediately classifies Maddie's disappearance as involuntary and suspicious, which tells us they knew right away that something was seriously wrong.
Right. Then we have Adam Fravel, the father of Maddie's children, posting on Facebook asking for help finding her. The article mentions that his plea, while it seemed heartfelt, got some mixed reactions from the community.
Oh, interesting.
Do you think that's significant at all?
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to the case. I mean, it could suggest that there were already concerns about Adam within the community. Or maybe people just didn't know what to make of his role in the situation.
Right. It's really hard to say. Meanwhile, the search for Maddie starts to expand in a big way. The article describes this massive effort with law enforcement volunteers, and even the mayor of Winona, Scott Sherman, was personally involved in the search.
Wow, the mayor's involvement really shows how much this case impacted the entire community.
For sure. It wasn't just a police investigation. It was a collective effort to bring Maddie home.
Definitely.
And a lot of that community engagement was because of Maddie's sister, Megan.
Oh, right.
She used TikTok to share her sister's story and rally support.
That's amazing.
It is hundreds of volunteers showed up inspired by her posts. They were combing through woods, riverbanks, you name it. They were determined to find any trace of Maddie.
That's a powerful example of how social media can be used for good,
Yeah.
to mobilize entire communities.
Totally. And it can turn individual concern into this massive collective action.
Exactly. Megan's use of TikTok was so effective in raising awareness way beyond just Winona.
Absolutely. But even with all of those people searching, no trace of Maddie was ever found. So that brings us to another layer of this case, Maddie's personal life.
Okay.
The article reveals that her relationship with Adam Fravel was strained, and that she was also seeing another man, Spencer Sullivan.
Oh, so the introduction of these relationships kind of throws a wrench into the whole investigation. Were these relationships adding stress to Maddie's life? Could someone from her past be involved?
Right. There are so many questions about potential motives and hidden tension.
Yeah, for sure.
And to add to the mystery even more, friends of Maddie mentioned that she had been talking about making some major life changes.
What kind of changes?
We don't know exactly. Was she thinking about ending a relationship, moving to a new city, starting a new job?
It's a huge question. Was someone trying to stop her from making those changes?
Right.
Was she putting herself in danger somehow by wanting a new life?
These are some serious questions. Every new piece of information in this case seems to just add another layer of complexity.
It really is like peeling back the layers of an onion. Each layer reveals something new and potentially unsettling.
And we can't forget the human cost of this whole mystery.
Yeah.
The article quotes Maddie's mother, Krista, who describes her daughter's disappearance as a void that cannot be filled. Her words are just heartbreaking. They capture the pain and the grief of a family that's been torn apart.
It reminds us that behind the headlines and all the investigative details, there are real people who are going through something unimaginable.
Absolutely. And yet, even in the face of this tragedy, there's still a glimmer of hope. The article highlights how unified the Winona community was Maddie's family, the volunteers, law enforcement. They all stayed so determined to find her miniature. Maddie's sister Megan said it best. People don't just vanish, we will find her. But the question remains, how could someone vanish without a trace in a town where everyone seems to know everyone?
That's the million-dollar question, and that's what we're going to keep exploring as we dive deeper into this case.
So, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I want to hear from you. What stands out to you so far? Does anything from Maddie's life, the timeline, the relationship strike you as particularly significant?
I think it's really interesting that Maddie's car was found at her house. Her phone and wallet were left behind, too. If she planned to leave, you'd think she would have taken those things with her, right?
That's a great point. It definitely makes her disappearance seem even more sudden and unexplained. Let's keep that in mind as we move into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll get into the investigation of theories and the lingering questions that still surround this case.
It's crazy how cases like Maddie's really show just how important community involvement is in these missing person investigations.
Totally. Especially in smaller towns like Winona, where everybody knows everybody.
Right.
Those personal connections and the willingness of people to get involved can make a huge difference.
It's true. The article talked about how people in Winona really rallied around Maddie's family.
Yeah.
And it went way beyond just the search efforts. They offered emotional support, they organized fundraisers, they just kept her story alive in their conversations and on social media.
Right, and that constant engagement can be so crucial for keeping the pressure on investigators
For sure.
and making sure the case doesn't go cold.
Exactly.
But as we dig deeper into this case, we start to see some of the cracks, those underlying tensions that can exist even in these really close-knit communities.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Remember how Adam Fravel's initial Facebook plea for help got some mixed reactions?
Right.
That suggests that maybe there were already some concerns or doubts about him within the community.
Do you think those doubts could have hindered the investigation in any way?
It's possible. I mean, if people were already suspicious of Adam, they might have been less likely to share information with the police or to cooperate with the investigation.
Right.
Or maybe some important clues got overlooked because of those existing biases.
That's a really good point. And then we have Spencer Sullivan, the other man that Maddie was connected with.
Right.
We don't know a lot about him from the article,
Yeah.
but his presence just adds another layer of complexity to everything.
For sure. Was this just a casual thing, or was there something more serious going on between them? Was there any bad blood between Adam and Spencer? These are all things that investigators would need to look into.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion. With every new piece of information, the picture gets more and more complicated,
Exactly.
and the potential motives just keep multiplying.
Totally. It's a classic whodunit, but with real-life consequences and a missing person.
Right. And in real life, there isn't always a clear resolution.
It's true.
Sometimes the answers remain elusive and the pieces don't quite fit together.
Hmm.
So what do you make of the fact that Maddie's car was found at her home? Her phone and her wallet were left behind too.
Yeah, that's strange. It seems like she didn't plan on leaving.
Right.
If she was going somewhere, wouldn't she have taken those essentials with her?
Well, unless she was forced to leave against her will, or maybe someone took those things on purpose to try and mislead investigators.
That's always a possibility. And then there's that detail about Maddie considering making some big life changes.
Right.
Was she about to end a relationship? Move to a new city? Start a new job?
Yeah. Was someone trying to stop her from making those changes?
Maybe.
Or did someone see her desire for a new life as a threat?
It's all speculation at this point.
Right.
But these possibilities add a whole psychological element to the case.
For sure.
It makes you think about all the hidden tensions and resentments that could have been simmering beneath the surface.
Yeah. And speaking of hidden tensions, the article mentions that the police searched the area around Maddie's home multiple times, including a nearby landfill.
Oh, wow.
That detail, even though it's just a quick mention, is really chilling.
It is. It suggests the investigators might have thought something bad happened,
Right.
and that evidence could be hidden somewhere you wouldn't expect.
It's a reminder that even in the most peaceful places, bad things can happen,
Definitely.
and tragedies can unfold in ways we never see coming.
So it all comes back to that central question. What happened to Maddie Kingsbury?
Exactly.
Was it foul play, a tragic accident, or something else entirely?
The article doesn't give us any definite answers, but it does offer some interesting clues. It mentions that investigators interviewed a lot of people, including Adam Fravel and Spencer Sullivan,
Did they?
but no arrests were made.
It must be so frustrating for the investigators and Maddie's family,
I can't even imagine.
not knowing whether to hold on to hope or prepare for the worst.
It's a horrible situation.
Yeah.
And that's the reality the Winona community has had to face.
But they haven't given up hope.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. They continue to organize searches, hold vigils, and share Maddie's story on social media.
It's truly inspiring. But we can't overlook the emotional toll that this must be taking on everyone involved.
Of course not. Especially Maddie's family.
The article quotes Maddie's mother, Krista, and her words are just heartbreaking.
I bet.
She talks about the unbearable pain of not knowing what happened to her daughter.
It's a powerful reminder that behind all the headlines and the investigation, there are real people who are suffering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how they find the strength to keep going, to keep searching when the trail has gone cold.
I think it shows the power of love and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest times, there's still hope.
And it reminds us that Maddie's story isn't just some mystery to be solved.
Right.
It's a human tragedy that has real consequences for real people.
Exactly. As we move into the last part of our deep dive, we'll explore the broader implications of this case and the questions it raises about community relationships and the mysteries that sometimes haunt our lives.
Okay.
We'll also look at what happened in the months after the events in this article to see if any new information came out.
That's a great idea. Before we do, is there anything that stands out to you about the early stages of the investigation?
I'm really fascinated by how those small, seemingly ordinary details can become so important in a case like this.
Like what?
Like the text messages Maddie sent to her sister,
Right.
or the fact that her car was left at home. Those things can hold the key to figuring out what really happened.
It just shows how important it is to pay attention to the little things.
Exactly.
They can sometimes be the most revealing. Let's keep that in mind as we move into the next chapter of this story. It's crazy, right? Like you were saying about those seemingly normal details. They can be so important.
Yeah, they really can. I mean, here's Maddie. She's a young mom, a working professional, a student.
Right, a totally normal life.
Exactly. Someone so many people can relate to, and then suddenly she's just gone.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that these kinds of things can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime.
It really does. It makes you question everything you think you know about safety and security.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The article also talked about the role of social media in all of this.
Yeah.
Especially how Maddie's sister Megan used TikTok to get the word out and rally support.
Oh, right.
What do you think about how social media is changing the way we handle missing person cases?
It's a tough one, you know? On the one hand, social media can be an amazing tool. It helps share information, connect with volunteers, keep these stories in the public eye.
Right? Like we saw in this case with Megan's TikTok campaign.
Exactly. But at the same time, social media can also be a breeding ground for misinformation and speculation.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
We have to be super careful about what we're reading and sharing online.
Yeah, especially in cases like this where emotions are so high, everyone wants answers, and it can be hard to separate fact from fiction.
Totally. We also have to remember that there are real people behind these cases. Real people who are going through something unimaginable.
Absolutely. We should always treat these stories with sensitivity and respect.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit. I think it's important to talk about the role of law enforcement in all of this.
Yeah.
The article mentioned that the Winona Police Department did a ton of work. They conducted extensive searches, followed up on leads, interviewed a bunch of people.
It sounds like they were really dedicated to this case.
They were. Investigating a missing person case is incredibly hard, especially when there are so many unknowns.
It takes serious skill and dedication to handle a case like that.
And as we talked about earlier, those public perceptions and biases can really complicate things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It can make it so much harder for law enforcement to get to the truth.
So what can we take away from all of this? What are the most important things we've learned from this deep dive into the Madeline Kingsbury case?
Well, one thing that really stands out to me is the power of community.
Right.
We saw how the people of Winona came together to search for Maddie, support her family, and keep her story alive.
That's so true. It shows how strong human connection can be.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even when things seem hopeless, we're not alone.
It also shows that even the smallest actions can make a difference.
Right.
Whether it's sharing information, volunteering our time, or just spreading awareness,
Mm.
we can all play a part in bringing missing people home.
Absolutely. And I think as we continue to think about this case, we have to remember that there are still so many unanswered questions.
Yeah. We may never know exactly what happened to Maddie Kingsbury.
But that doesn't mean we should stop looking for answers.
The search for truth and justice never really ends.
You're right. It takes patience, persistence, and the willingness to keep asking questions, even when it feels like there are no answers.
I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that we need to cherish our loved ones
Mhm.
and appreciate every moment we have with them. Maddie's story is a reminder that life is precious and our connections with others are what really matter.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to encourage everyone listening to hold on to hope. Hope for answers, hope for resolution, hope for the safe return of all missing persons.
It's all we can do.
We'll continue to follow this story and share any updates as we get them. But until then, let's keep Maddie and her loved ones in our thoughts.
And let's remember that even when we don't have all the answers, we can find strength in each other. We can find comfort in our memories. And we can always find hope in the belief that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can overcome anything.